Hey, everybody. Welcome in. I'm going to give it a minute or so for folks to join in. But in the meantime, let me know where everyone's calling in from. So if you've attended any of my previous webinars that I've hosted, you'll know that I'm based in New York City. And I know we have some Kilo team members, in the chat from all around the world. So I'm curious to know where all of you are calling in from. I see a comment about no sound. Is that true for everybody? Just want to make sure. Okay, sound is good. Yeah, it's unfortunately it was supposed to snow today and I was excited for the first big snow of New York, but it ended up raining as it usually does um in the Northeast US. So, hi from Boston. I actually lived in Boston for 4 years before I moved to New York, so it's got a special place in my heart for sure. I see Thailand. I actually visited Thailand last year and it was one of the best experiences of my life. It was beautiful. Can't wait to go back someday. All right, just gonna give it one more minute or so, and then we can get started. All right, welcome everybody. So I'm Brian. I'm a developer relations engineer here at Kilo Code, and today is kind of a different session for us. We're not doing our usual thing where a big model drops and everyone's talking about it, and we're kind of showing you what we found, and the internet's already flooded with hot takes and opinions. This is something else. So we got early access to a stealth model from a top 10 AI model lab in the world. And as of yesterday, when Kilo Code users had exclusive early access for the first 24 hours, there wasn't much press about it outside of our own chatter. So I'm excited to talk about it today and share our first impressions of the model, whose code name is Spectre. So today I want to talk about what this stealth model is and why it matters. We're going to talk about what the role of stealth models are in the landscape of AI engineering and Kilo Code in general. And then we're actually going to use it in a demo so we can see for ourselves what it can do. But first, let me just say if you're here, you're kind of in on something before the rest of the market knows about it, right? Especially because this model was available exclusively in Kilo Code for the first 24 hours before it was available anywhere else. And for this testing period, there are no usage caps and it's completely free for everybody. So let's get excited about that, right? When a well-known lab, a top lab in the world, puts out a free new model and we get the chance to run it with no boundaries, that's an exciting thing. And I know that I personally have really enjoyed the whole stealth model trend that has kind of emerged in the world of AI coding lately. And I was really excited to get the chance to play around with this one in particular. And if you have any questions along the way, feel free to throw them in the chat. And by the end of the session, I'll try to get around to as many as I can. So let's dive in and talk about first what could be sort of an obvious question. What is a stealth model? And I think most people, when they hear that, they think it's like some kind of secret project, right? Like it's a hidden, sneaky, elusive experience. And that's kind of true, but it can be a little bit more nuanced than that, too. So, a stealth model is basically a model that a lab releases anonymously without the big announcement that we're used to at this point. There isn't the same level of press, no, we're changing the world blog post, no flood of benchmarks and reports where everyone drops their review at the same time. It just kind of appears and no one takes immediate ownership, often to a small group at first and then maybe a wider release later. And the question you might be asking is why? Why would a lab with something good not want to shout about it? And there's a few general reasons for that, right? And I think they're all kind of interesting. And because these are stealth models, we don't always know the exact reason behind each one. And that's kind of part of what makes it fun, right? The top secret nature of it all is fun when all we can really do is speculate. So, one reason could be testing, right? Real world testing. They want to see how it performs when people are actually using it, not just the benchmarks that are curated from internal tests or across the public ecosystem that they kind of got to gather privately before a proper launch. Benchmarks are, well, they're useful, don't get me wrong, but they don't tell you everything, right? They don't tell you how the model handles your weird and personal edge cases or how it deals with things like a Rails app that has 15 years of technical debt. You know what I mean? And another reason is competitive. Sometimes a lab has something really good and it doesn't make sense to inform the world about it yet. Like if you announce, we're releasing a model optimized for X, Y, and Z, then everyone knows where you're headed. But if you just quietly get it into the people's hands and let it speak for itself, that's a different approach and one that makes sense for certain releases. And then there's the third reason, which I think is the most interesting. Sometimes these models are experiments in a way. They're trying something different. Maybe it's a new training approach, maybe a different optimization target. And they want to see if it works before anything else. So the fact that one of the top 10 AI labs in the world is doing this and they chose KiloCode as the first agent to have access, that says something, right? It says something about where they think the real testing ground is and who they think the most valuable testers are. And that's all of you, which I think is like a really exciting thing. It's not about curated use cases and benchmarks. It's about developers actually building something. That's the audience they care about and want to gauge. So the next thing I want to get into, which is something that I think is really important, is where all of this is going. So when we talk about agentic engineering, what we mean is AI that truly does things, takes actions, uses tools, thinks through multiple steps using different and specialized approaches. And we're at this really interesting moment where the models are finally getting good enough that you can trust them to do that. Like a year ago or even some months ago, if you tried to build out an agent that could or build with an agent that could, I don't know, read your code base, understand a complex bug report on it, find the relevant files, and architect a fix and actually implement that fix on its own, well, it probably would hallucinate constantly. It would miss things, and you might spend more time trying to fix its mistakes than if you just tried to do it yourself. And to even consider doing all of that in one shot or one or two prompts was simply unimaginable back then, right? But now we're getting models that can actually hold the context, reason about it, and take sensible actions when paired with an agentic coding platform like Kilo. And that changes everything about how we work with AI. Spectre, from what we've seen so far, is very clearly built with this in mind. It's clearly optimized for handling software development tasks that require steady reasoning and agentic orchestration. And when we built with it, we could tell that the training, the optimization, all of it was geared towards use cases that real developers are facing. And the context window matters here too, right? It has 256,000 token input window, which I'll explain a little more detail in a minute. That's significant. That's plenty for most coding tasks and says, this model can read a significant portion of your code base and actually understand the relationship between things, not just I can see a few files at a time and kind of guess about the rest. So when I look at Spectre from a high level, I see a model that was designed ambitiously for developers. This isn't like a general purpose model that happens to be okay at code. This is something that was clearly built to compete in a time where frontier models like Gemini 3 and Claude Opus 4.5 are releasing seemingly every week or so. So let me give you the actual specs, or as much as we know, because I know some of you are here for that too. So Spectre, like I said, comes from one of the top 10 AI model labs in the world. I can't tell you which one, but it's a name you'd recognize, and you're welcome to guess in the chat. I won't be able to confirm or deny, but I'm curious to hear what y'all think. So, like I said, the context window is 256,000 tokens. For reference, Claude Opus 4.5, which is the latest frontier model to drop, has a 200,000 token context window. And while some other recent models boast the 1 million token window, 256,000 is still quite large, and I think suitable for most general software engineering tasks and code bases. The max output is 8,000 tokens, which is generally enough to generate substantial code changes without hitting too many walls. And there's maybe one limitation right now, which is that there's no image input yet. So it's not multimodal. It's text and code right now, which in our use case for agentic engineering It's not a huge deal, but that might be part of some people's workflows, especially when it comes to front end stuff and design things. So no images now, but I have heard that we can expect updates in that area in the future. And perhaps the most striking quality, of course, is that right now there are no usage caps and it's completely free in this testing period, as in none, unlimited access. So when we say make it burn, we really mean it. And for people who are doing real development work, that changes how you use the model. You're not rationing, you're not thinking, is this query worth it? You just use it. You build and you build with no boundaries. And I think that's really exciting opportunity, especially from a model lab as renowned as this one is. And I'd encourage you all to give it a try and just let us know what you think because we're listening. So we've been testing this internally, and I want to share some of the things that we found that it does really well. So the first one is we asked it to build a simple 2D game. I'm going to show something similar in the demo later. And if you've been to any of the webinars I've hosted before, you might have an idea of what that is. But for this first task, we just asked it to build a simple classic 2D game and had no problems handling that in one shot. Like we described what we wanted and it generated a working game with actual mechanics and, obstacles and objectives. In one shot, that's pretty impressive to me anyway. It's sort of slowly becoming the norm that these models are able to create end-to-end apps in one shot, but it's still very impressive to me. I still nerd out about it, so that's exciting. Second, we asked it to debug a memory leak in a Rails app. And now, if you ever tried to track down a memory leak, you know how tedious that can be without help. It's not like a syntax error where something just breaks. It's subtle, can accumulate, and Spectre was able to identify it, and a hard to find one at that. And that tells me that the reasoning capabilities are there, like actually there, and you can trust it to address real bugs. And the third is that we asked it to migrate an old Next.js 12 project to the latest, which is Next.js 16, I believe. And if you've done framework migrations, you know that it's not just change some imports, it's understanding what changed between versions, updating patterns, dealing with deprecated APIs, all of that stuff. And it handled that really well as well. Some other things were that it successfully performed targeted edits on the files that it created within the same chat. So that's an important characteristic to look at. So let's say you ask Spectre to implement a new feature and then followed up in the same chat with a tweak to that request. It's able to ingest that new context and perform accurate updates. It also performed well at targeted edits on files created in previous chats when asked in a new chat. So in that case, you would have requested it to implement a feature in one chat in KiloCode, close that chat, and then requested an edit in a brand new chat. Still no problems there. It was great. We also found that it works really well with Kilo's agentic orchestration capabilities, meaning that when you use orchestrator mode, which I'll talk about more later, but it's basically a specialized mode in KiloCode that breaks up tasks into subtasks for other specialized modes. It performed really well at designing, distributing, and executing subtasks from a high-level initial request. So that'd be something like asking it to one-shot a video game, or something that is a high-level project where you ask Kilo to plan, implement, and execute the whole vision end to end. So I'm going to explain more during the demo later about, some of the quirks and characteristics and personalities of this model. But when I say it really feels like it was optimized for modern agentic software development, I'm truly not just reading copy from a press or marketing release. Like that's one of the benefits of playing with these stealth models is that we're able to give an honest opinion, and I've actually used it and it does the thing. So as I mentioned earlier, my favorite way to understand a new model is to build something with it. And in this case, being a stealth model, we don't have the public benchmarks, the stats, or the PR data that comes along with a typical release. So that actually makes our building experience even more valuable, right? It makes our firsthand sessions with the model that much important. And if you've been to any of the previous webinars I've hosted, I've said that a few times now, but you know two things. One is that my go-to demo for a new model is to try to get it to build our favorite 2D platformer game, Kilo Man, which if you haven't seen it, you're about to find out what that is in one shot. And that I prefer to record my end-to-end demos, especially for these one shots. And the reason for that is I'm addressing this because I've seen some comments about it in past webinars, but building with AI is non-deterministic, meaning that you'll get different results every time, even with the same prompt and same model. So you never actually know how long it'll take to complete a task. So for the interest of time, I like to record these demos and speed through the parts where Kilo is thinking and building so that we can just talk about the important stuff. So we're going to take a look at that recording right now. And I see a question, what is your biggest criticism of it? I'm going to get to that after the demo. So I see your question, and I'll answer that shortly. Okay, so I went over to VS Code and I opened the Kilo Code extension. I made sure I selected Spectre from the model selector, and then I switched to orchestrator mode. So if you don't already know, Kilo has 5 built-in agent modes that are specialized for different type of tasks. So there's architect for project design, there's code, which is the default for implementation. There's ask when you have questions that don't require you to change anything in your code base, debug for troubleshooting, and then orchestrator, which breaks down the task and distributes subtasks across all the other agent modes. So I switched to orchestrator, and then I gave Kilo this prompt. In this Next.js app, create a modern, detailed 2D platform game called Kilo Man with a humanoid character that has to avoid obstacles and moving monsters to reach a final goal, like Super Mario. It should be full screen with a parallax aesthetic background and a black and yellow theme. The game camera should follow the player. There should only be one fairly long scrolling level and include a slider that adjusts the player's jumping height. So I've given that same prompt to Opus and Gemini, just as a good litmus test. So what's happening now is that Orchestrator went ahead and generated a subtask for Architect to design the implementation. Architect generated an architecture plan in a markdown file, which we can look at later. It switches back to Orchestrator when the plan is ready, and then generates a new subtask for code mode to implement the plan. And that's what we're looking at now. So we're going to speed through all this development. And when it's done, Kilo switches back to orchestrator mode to provide a summary of the final state of the project. So someone said, tell us more about the prompt. I can share the prompt later. We're going to do a recap of this webinar and a blog post. So I'll tell you all about the prompt I used, give you an inside look at this demo. And also in a minute, we're going to dive into the architecture plan that architect mode designed for this app. So as promised, I haven't touched this app since this one shot. But I have it here running in my local environment. So let's check it out. And yeah, this is really fun for me. And we have another new feature that I'm going to demo in a minute to show why it's even more fun. Let me share my screen here. All right, so here we go. I'm going to refresh. And yeah, I mean, it looks pretty good. I'm definitely satisfied with it. We got the monsters here. You can defeat them by jumping on them. We have like a health bar. We have the jump height slider. The parallax background looks really good. Like if you can see when I move the buildings in the background, the far background move faster than the ones in the foreground. It kind of creates that like parallax effect. It looks like we have like some kind of road spikes here that can kill you. Sorry if it's laggy. But yeah, I mean, at first glance, I'd be extremely satisfied with this result as a developer, especially knowing it was done in one prompt. You know, there's no obvious design flaws, and it's basically exactly what I was hoping to create. So going back to my one criticism, and this is, you know, not necessarily always a criticism, but just something I noticed during the real-time development session that I sped through, was that compared to the recent frontier model launches like Opus 4.5 and Gemini 3, Spectre actually appeared to plan and develop like a lot more robustly. And because of that, it took longer to accomplish the task. And in certain use cases, you might say that it was a bit over engineered. Now, for this use case, it was great because I wanted to create a really robust and optimized and fulfilled game in one shot. So I'm glad it went as deep as it did. And this is obviously anecdotal, so I'd love to hear everyone else's experience with it. And I do think I saw a comment in the chat saying something similar, that they felt like it had a tendency to over engineer. And that's also what Anthropic told us about Opus 4.5. So maybe that's just a trend in the latest models, that you have to be a little stricter in your prompt. But I think what I'm seeing here are the results of that really robust planning and architecture, right? So like we have features that were not present in the versions of Kilo Man that I created with Gemini and Opus. Like I'm looking at the controls here. We have a shift to sprint button, which makes you run faster. We have the declining health bar, where you don't just get killed immediately by the monsters or enemies or whatever. It knocks at your health, and then your health decreases over time until you eventually lose. We also have this point system with these coins, where you collect coins and your points are incremented. And the background and stuff is really filled out and pretty. I think personally the flashing lights are a little much for me. I like the aesthetic, but if I were going to take another pass at this, I'd probably tone that down a little bit, um, personally. But yeah, I mean it's great, and there's a lot here. But as I said, it did take longer. It iterated further on its own, and so perhaps that's a takeaway, that this model Spectre can really run away with the task and bring it to its fullest fruition from the first prompt, especially when combined with orchestrator mode, which in this use case is great. Like I said, I didn't want to have to do too much development work. I'm almost glad that it engineered as much as it did, because I wanted to have this fulfilled game. But perhaps to avoid over engineering, which can be a problem with AI models in certain other use cases, maybe it's wise to prompt it more strictly than I did, or provide some more guardrails in the prompt. And that's exactly what we heard about Opus 4.5 from Anthropic as well. But overall, I'm super impressed with this. I think it's probably the most robust and realized version of Kilo Man yet, frankly. But let's go ahead and dive a little deeper into exactly how um, we built the project, and we'll take a look at the plan that Architect Mode developed for the implementation. So it's going to switch over to VS Code. And all the versions of Kilo Man are public, so you can play all of them. They're all posted on our blogs. I'll link them all in the recap, so you can decide which one's your favorite. Um, so here's the project up in VS Code, and we can see this document here, this Markdown document, game design, which is the architecture plan that Architect Mode came up with. So we have the table of contents, we have the overview. Okay, it's a 2D platformer with the cyberpunk neon, black and yellow color scheme, Next.js, the concept of a fast-paced platform game. If we look at the core technologies, we have Next.js 15 and React 19. It's a custom 2D engine built with React and Canvas, custom physics engine with collision detection, HTML5 canvas with React for the graphics, React Context API, and Zoostan for game state, Tailwind CSS for the UI, and canvas-based sprite animation. Sprite meaning our avatar there that we control. And this part was really interesting to me, is all of the different systems in the game engine. So this is already, I can tell, a lot more complex than the versions built by Gemini and Opus. So we have separate systems contained within this game engine for physics, rendering, input, audio. I didn't even know it had audio. I'm going to have to test that out later, turn up the volume and see what kind of noises are in there. That's definitely something that the other versions didn't have. We have the collision detection, movement physics, canvas renderer, sprite animation, keyboard input, touch input, and all of that. So it imported these libraries for physics simulations, audio management. Again, I'm gonna have to test that out later. And then it added all of this information here for physics, design, implementation. Here's the parallax background setup, the character design, the movement states. So, it really ran away with my idea and took it exactly where I wanted to go, with all of these kind of nuances that I didn't necessarily articulate in the prompt, which I think is really great for this sort of one-shot experiment. But like I said, maybe you don't want it to make those liberties, in which case you could be a little bit more strict with how you prompt it. Someone asked, did you specifically ask it to create the game design document? No. So when you use orchestrator mode, typically the first subtask that it will create is a subtask for architect mode, which takes your prompt and develops the game design or architecture plan for the project. So that's where this came from. I didn't specifically ask it to. Again, I'll share the prompt later. But when you use orchestrator mode, that's just part of the workflow. And that's, in my opinion, what makes Kilo really special is that agentic orchestration across all of those different subtasks. So yeah, I mean, this is probably the grandest, most robust architecture plan that we've gotten from our experiments with Kilo Man. And a lot of these choices are probably choices that I would have made for building this project. Um, and yeah, like I said, this kind of robust engineering can be really great. And I think it comes down to being specific about what you want in your prompt. And if anyone's built something end to end like this with Spectre, I know we have some submissions for our $500 or $500 of credits giveaway, but I love to hear more about your experience. But now that we have this awesome project, I think it's a choice opportunity to show off my personal favorite new Kilo feature, Kilo Deploy. So I just pushed this app to a repo in my personal GitHub. And if we go over to the Kilo dashboard, which I'm going to have to stop sharing and share again, we can see that we have this deploy tab here. And the first step we would have had to do is go to this integrations tab and connect to GitHub, which is, I've already done it, of course, because I've been experimenting with deploy a lot. But all this, if you hadn't done it, you just go to integrations. There'll be a button that says configure. Click it, brings you over to GitHub where you can approve the app to be installed in your org. And then you'll be connected to GitHub and the deploy functionality will be enabled. So if we go to the deploy tab, we can click new deployment. We can see that our GitHub, my personal workspace here is already loaded from connecting, and we can select a repository. So we're going to select Kilo Man from Spectre. If we only have the main branch because it was this one shot. But if we had other branches, we could specify the branch, and then we can click create deployment. And what that's going to do is launch a publicly shareable version of this app to a unique URL. So we'll give that a second to work, but that's like super exciting because that means you can share it with anybody. You can show your friends, you can show your colleagues, whatever you want. So we're going to give that a second to work. We can see it's building. There's the build logs here, and we'll come back to it after the next segment. So I'm going to switch back over to the slides. And okay. So in my opinion, who is this model for? In our opinion, well, I think Spectre is for true developers and builders, right? People actually building things. And if you're someone who's looking to use AI to write poems or help you brainstorm vacation ideas, this really isn't that. If you're working on a code base, if you're debugging, if you're doing migrations, if you're building features, this is where Spectre shines, in my opinion. And as I mentioned earlier, the fact that Kilo was chosen as the first testing grounds is really proof that the team behind this model cares about builders and what builders think. And the fact that it's free and unlimited right now, like it's kind of a no-brainer to at least try and experiment with it, right? There's no risk, you're not committing anything. Just pull it up in Kilo code and see what it can do for your workflow. And the team behind this model is, from what I can tell, extremely ambitious. And you feel that when you use it. It doesn't feel like a side project or an afterthought. It feels like something they've put serious work into optimizing for developers. So I know that yeah, we have my colleague Alessia in the chat with some people that want to submit for the $500 prize. So we're giving away $500 of credits to 3 people. So I've already chosen one of those people because I wanted to share the awesome thing they've built during the webinar. So there's still 2 open slots. So you still have time to submit to the contest. And, we'll be taking a look at everything that is submitted. And we're super excited to see what you've built. So that person is, and I'm just going to make sure I have the right thing pulled up. So the first winner of the $500 credit giveaway is at Andrew Sayer on X. So this was such a cool idea. And this person discovered that their local government collects traffic data by scanning the passing unique MAC addresses of Bluetooth devices on the road. So they have these scanners, like when you're driving by in your car, your phone, or any other Bluetooth device you have pings this scanner, and they can use that to detect how busy the road is. So Andrew built an app that uses that data, which is open source, which is obviously we love that at Kilo, to send them push notifications when their typical traffic routes are busy, which I think is so cool and so interesting and something that I totally would have built for myself if I had the same data. So basically an end-to-end app where they'll get push notifications whenever the road is busy near them. And so hats off to at Andrew Sayer. They also posted this on X, so you can go check it out there. We'll be giving you the $500 of credits this afternoon, and there's still 2 open spots to to throw your hat in the ring for that contest. So hey, Andrew, I mean, I don't know the framework you built this app with, but if it's Next.js, you could give it a shot at deploying it with Kilo Deploy and then share with everybody. That'd be awesome. All right, so now that we've given it a minute, I want to go back and check on our deployment, and I see some love in the chat for Andrew's work. So congrats to them. I'm going to stop sharing this. And then we'll share our dashboard here. Okay, so here we go. This is our deployment that we just pushed. So we can see we have a unique URL, the repository, the status. You know, if it had failed, it would show here. We have the build logs. Looks like we have some linter errors that weren't a problem in deploying it. So I should probably have that fixed. You could redeploy if you wanted, and you could delete the deployment here. So if we click on this, and it looks like it's not jumping with me to the other tab. So it's kind of annoying. Here we go. So now we have the same game that we just played, right? Except it's deployed to a hosted public URL. And I just think that's so fun because like I love to build like ridiculous little apps, and given like the power that these new models have, you can pretty much do anything, build anything you want to build, and then deploy it and share it with your friends and colleagues. So yeah, I'm gonna be sharing this version of Kilo Man in the wrap up of the webinar afterwards. And I'd love for all of you to give it a try and let me know what you think. Let me know what you think could have been improved or what's missing. And yeah, here we have the shareable URL. So I don't know. I think I might be the #1 user of Kilo Deploy at this point because I just think it's so fun to spin up an app in Kilo Code, push it to GitHub, and then deploy that URL that any of my friends and coworkers can visit and interact with. I just think that end-to-end loop is so satisfying. So I'm super excited that this is available for everybody now. You know, we're launching this for everybody to use, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. I'd love to hear all of your experience with trying it, and I'd really encourage you to give it a try and let us know what you think. So like to wrap up what just happened, we just used Kilo's orchestrator mode with Spectre as the model to create a working game in one shot, test it, and deploy it to a public URL that anyone can use in pretty much just one prompt and a few clicks. And I don't know what y'all think, but I think that's pretty incredible. And I think Spectre really shined in this end-to-end, really robust architecture that was required to produce the finished product. Someone said all within 30 minutes. And in reality, it was probably even faster than that, right? Because I was walking through the demo and talking and, you know, talking all your ears off. But yeah, it was, I think, as I said, Spectre really shined in that end-to-end robust architecture that was required to produce this. And just to summarize some of the other points we talked about today. So stealth models are a thing. They're how labs test and refine capabilities before making big announcements. And when a top 10 lab gives early access to a coding agent like Kilo, that's basically them saying, in my opinion, this is where the real work happens. And I think it's clear from our impressions that Spectre is really conducive to agentic work. It's not just a general purpose chatbot that can kind of code. It's clearly optimized for software development with a context window and skills that make sense for real engineering work. We've had good results with it, building, debugging, migrating. It does the thing, and you can try it right now in Kilo Code. As I said, no limits, free for a limited time. So yeah, that's Spectre. That's our impression of it. Go try it. Let us know what you think. Build something cool with it. Show us what you built. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm going to stick around and answer as many questions as I can. No pressure to stay. But I'm just going to go through the chat now and go through some questions. So one question is, will Kilo deploy only apply to Next.js apps as a permanent limitation? So right now it only supports Next.js apps. Um, I don't think any of us like to say anything's a permanent limitation. I don't have any news on that now. But we do have a roadmap on kilo.ai/next. So I would tune into that page for any updates on the future, and we'll be sure to make some noise about it whenever anything changes there. Um, so yeah, Next.js apps only right now. In the future, who knows? All right, I'm just checking through the chat for some more questions. Someone said it would be cool if the buildings in the background of this Kiloman version spelled out Kilo code on the buildings. That would be very cool. I think that's something you'd probably have to specify in the prompt. So maybe next time I'll do that. Just reading through the chat here. Someone said, with the way Opus is performing at the moment, it will take some convincing for me to move completely. Happy to play with it though. I think that's the fun and beauty of these stealth models, right? And that's the beauty of open model selection in Kilo Code. You're never locked into one model. So when a new, exciting, fun model comes out and it's free to use with no limits, you can just jump over to that model and build something with it, and then jump back to whatever model you're comfortable with if you decide you don't like it, or stick with it if you decide you do like it. And you can even switch in the middle of a project, doesn't matter, which is great. So what is the deadline for the contest? So the deadline for the contest is 9 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning, December 3rd. That's when we're going to call it and announce the other two winners. Someone asked, did you use orchestration mode for upgrading the Next.js application? So I'm not totally sure what you mean by upgrading, if you want to provide more context, but yeah, so we used orchestration mode to build the whole app from the start. And basically what I did is I just created an empty Next.js app using the command in the terminal. Create, I think it's npx, create Next.js at 15. Another caveat is that it only supports Next.js 14 and 15 right now. I know there's a newer version that released recently, 16, and that's on the roadmap as well. So just a heads up there. So I didn't use orchestrator mode to do anything, except I gave it that initial prompt, and it built the whole app end to end inside that Next.js app. Someone said, do these events happen on a regular basis? They sure do. In fact, this is the 5th or 6th webinar that I've hosted in the past 3 weeks. So, I've quickly become a veteran at this, and we have a lot of other people on the team that are veterans and give great webinars. So, stay tuned. We make a lot of noise when we host these on across Discord, Reddit, X. Something you might get an email, and I think in the future we're probably going to even maybe have a place where you can subscribe to the events as they pop up. But they're definitely going to happen regularly. In fact, we have one on Thursday that I'm hosting about debugging apps with Minimax M2. So that's happening Thursday, probably around the same time. We'll make sure to send an invite to that in the follow up of this event. But I'm glad you liked it. I really appreciate that feedback. All right, I see a couple more people typing. We're gonna give them some time to ask some questions, and then we'll call it around 12:45. Someone said, "When do we find out who the model provider is?" Well, it wouldn't be stealth if we could give away that sort of information, right? So we can't reveal that, but we can say soon, which is not helpful. I understand, but that's part of the fun, right? So someone asked, was Spectre the only model used across all the kilo modes? In daily usage, would you use different models for different modes, or would you stick with Spectre across all of them? So for the sake of this experiment, wanting to see what Spectre could build on its own, I kept Spectre the whole time. But it's definitely recommended to switch it up. I think that using the more intelligent and better reasoning models, which are often more expensive for architect and orchestrator mode, where they're planning out the detailed project plan and orchestrating across all those other modes, would be optimal. And then maybe switching to cheaper, faster models for quick implementations and debugging, maybe like Minimax M2, Grok Code, or in those sort of models. So um, and obviously Spectre is free right now. So it's fun to just see what it can do compared to these other frontier models that have been releasing over the past couple weeks. Are there any plans to have physical events in 2026? I would honestly, I think so. I mean, we don't have any like specific news on that, but I'm in New York. There's going to be a lot of coding events all year in New York. We have people in SF. Um, and that's definitely something that I think we'd be wanting to do. So stay tuned for that. I don't have any news on that right now, but I would love to. I'd love to meet you all in person. That would be awesome. So just keep coming to these webinars. Stay tuned, and you'll be the first to know whenever we have an in-person event planned. Someone said that their submission got pinned on X. Emotional roller coaster. Thought you were going to announce all three today. I'm sorry about that, but this is an emotional experience with this secret, like powerful AI model. So yeah, no, we want to give everyone time to submit their work. If we retweeted it, then you did a great job, but we got to be fair. This is a contest. We got to be fair and give everyone time to submit. And that's why the reason we showed one today is because the project was so cool, and we wanted to talk about someone who submitted something very early, and inspire everyone else to submit something. So we really appreciate your submission, and we're going to be reviewing everybody's fairly for those remaining two rewards. Someone said it would be easier for a vibe coder like me to have the best budget models for all modes as a tier list provided by the Kilo team in events like this, as the options are plenty. And as a newbie, I don't know which one to choose. LOL. That's a totally fair perspective. And I do think we're working on something for that. So stay tuned. Um, you know, we want to give the best information, and we're going to be here doing events like this, creating content, videos, docs whenever there's a new model release, and to create the optimal agentic engineering experience for all of you. So that's great feedback. I do believe there's something in the works for that, so just stay tuned, and we'll let you all know when that is out. Yeah, shout out to at Terra's for being the first one to share your project. That's awesome. Um, and Tara said, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I apologize if I'm not, but that you thought we'd accept it until the first 100 million tokens of usage, but it was actually we would start rewarding people once we hit 100 million tokens. So that was the original contest. And in fact, we actually hit that in like 30 minutes or something. I think there was 350 million tokens used after 90 or minutes or 2 hours. So people are using it and they're building stuff with it, and we love that. So I don't want to keep everyone for too long. I appreciate everyone that joined and asked questions. Stay tuned for the event on Thursday. We'll be posting about that and how to join. And just real quick, if you want to join the conversation or you want to stay tuned, just join our join the conversation on Reddit and Discord. So the whole team is very active on both these platforms. We're here to hear what you think about the new models, about what you're building. And we're excited to have you as part of the Kilo community. So thanks again, everybody, for joining. And I hope to see you all soon in a future event. I'm going to leave this up for a minute, so if anyone wants to scan, but yeah, thanks everybody, and we'll talk soon.